Hello, it's Josh from Cyclone Oz, and today we're going to be talking about the developing Gulf of Carpentaria tropical cyclone that we're going to be seeing in around 6 or so days' time. Two forecast models have a reasonably strong system materialising out of this, but then the eastern relief being the outlier, calling for a weaker system. There is a very good chance that we see a very strong cyclone move through the Gulf of Carpentaria in about a week's time, but then again, model forecasts can change, and there's a lot of variables still out there in said forecast to really be decided and to have a home on what is actually going to go on. But nonetheless, we will still take a look at it, and then we're also going to go over to Vanuatu and take a look at the system over there. That's a tropical cyclone that's expected to impact Fiji, and then later on in the video we'll take a look at a more general picture of the Australian weather outlook. But starting things off up in the Gulf of Carpentaria, there's really nothing going on here in terms of cyclone activity or precursor cyclone activity on the satellite imagery. There is maybe a couple of hints. I mean, with this convective pattern, there might be a couple of hints that we're expecting a low pressure system to form in the monsoon trough, maybe around Catherine area, or maybe further in towards Kakadu on the Northern Territory, the northern reaches of the Northern Territory. It looks like there might be a little bit of a swirl starting to develop here. If you look at where the cursor is, really slowly rotating around what looks to be a very broad centre of circulation here. That's certainly not closed at this time, but I really might be nitpicking here and looking for patterns in the clouds that don't actually exist. We're not expecting anything to develop until maybe around next Tuesday or Wednesday, and this is where we're going to switch over to the wind forecast right now and start off with the Access G3, the most bullish of the models, mind you. But yeah, come to around Tuesday, we might be seeing this tropical low start to develop around Groote Island. We'll be seeing these westerly winds north of the Northern Territory and the Arufa Sea really start to pick up. You can see already getting up towards 40 to 50 kilometres an hour, with peak gusts probably at around 60 to 70 kilometres an hour, yeah. So they could be quite gusty up there in the Arufa Sea come around next Tuesday and Wednesday, but it's going to be around Wednesday when we start to see this low pressure system really define itself and organise itself properly offshore from Groote Island. And then around Thursday afternoon, it looks like it becomes a tropical cyclone as it moves deeper into the Gulf of Carpentaria. Now, the Access G3 model has backed off on its forecast peak intensity for this tropical cyclone. They were initially calling for a Category 4, now they're calling for a Category 2. Still though, a significant tropical cyclone, a Category 2, it can cause some significant tree damage and also damage to homes and property that aren't prepared. So if you do live on the coastline from Nullarbor down towards the Northern Territory, Queensland border, and then across to Kurumba, including Croydon and those areas, or inland to Croydon, then all through the Cape York Peninsula, especially the western extremities of it, it is advised that you watch this forecast very closely over the coming couple of days. I'll be giving you the latest, maybe even twice a day into early next week as we start to see what's going on here. Today's update will just be a quick one. I've got a lot to get through today. But yeah, come around Friday and into Saturday, definitely be moving to twice daily updates to discuss this system. So if you haven't already, then please do consider subscribing. It really does help the channel out. And looks like we've got this Category 2 strength tropical cyclone here with peak winds approaching 110 kilometres an hour as it makes its approach to Mornington Island. It doesn't look like it makes a landfall on Mornington Island, but it looks like it approaches a landfall just towards the northwest of Burkton with winds of around 120 kilometres an hour, gusting probably about 150. Whoa, actually about 180 kilometres an hour. That is some very strong wind gusts indeed. We're looking at a severe tropical cyclone here making landfall on Queensland coming around Saturday and into Sunday. Again, there's a lot of variables still out there in this forecast. It really doesn't have too much time over the Gulf of Carpentaria. In fact, it only spends about 48 hours over the Gulf of Carpentaria as a tropical cyclone. In fact, probably even less than that. Now, 48 hours for a cyclone to intensify to Category 3 or Category 4 status, you're definitely pushing it at that time. That's some really rapid intensification. But if we were to take a look at sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Carpentaria, where we're looking at 30 to 31 degrees Celsius, especially closer to the Queensland coastline, and even in one or two pockets around here, you're pushing 31 to 32 degrees Celsius. There is so much fuel for tropical cyclones here. This is one of the most energy abundant places in the entire world for a tropical cyclone to move through. So if it was to get itself over these, what is essentially jet fuel, it will have an absolute birthday party here, and it will be able to rapidly intensify and become a really gnarly system indeed. Wind shear in the Gulf of Carpentaria come around next Friday. It shouldn't be too high for the system if the Access G3 model is forecasting this sort of peak intensity. Still though, what we're looking at 10 to 15 knots here. It's not perfect for the tropical cyclone, and that's definitely got something to do with the monsoon. I mean, when you're getting monsoon activity, you're looking at higher than average wind shear conditions. But it isn't bad for the system at all. It'll certainly be able to rapidly intensify with 10 to 15 knots of wind shear, which is about 20 to 25 kilometers an hour, and you'll be able to see some really good banding features on this tropical cyclone. It could look fairly similar to, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, probably Cyclone Marcia in the Gulf of Carpentaria. That's a pretty good comparison for this tropical cyclone at peak intensity. Marcia didn't exactly have a clear eye, but I would be expecting this system to be on the way to churning out an eye feature on satellite imagery as it makes landfall, and it could be as strong as Marcia as well in terms of a Category 3 or Category 4 strength peak with some pretty impressive banding features as well. So that's what we're looking at on the satellite imagery. Certainly though, a really significant situation if it was to make a landfall as a Category 3 or Category 4 strength tropical cyclone. And we're going to take a look at the ECMWF and then the GFS model, and then we'll also take a look at the Archon model as well to round this video off. But the ECMWF model has a pretty different situation to what the Access G3 model has. It's very similar in terms of landfall location and also timing. They're actually pretty much exact they are. There's very good congruency in terms of track and time right now, which gives me a very high degree of confidence in saying that we're very likely to see a tropical cyclone form in the Gulf of Carpentaria by around Friday and Saturday, probably at about a 40 to 50% chance of actually occurring. But you can see the intensity forecast is way off. The ECMWF calling for a very weak Category 1 strength tropical cyclone compared to the Category 2 or Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone that the Access model was predicting. Now, this is expected. The ECMWF can lowball on systems, and the Access nearly always routinely goes way too high on these systems, especially how far out this is. So I am expecting this forecast to really continuously back itself down from the Access G3 model. What just has me concerned though is the fact that a Category 3, in fact a Category 5 strength system is possible in the Gulf of Carpentaria. The only thing holding this storm back is going to be the amount of time that it spends out to sea, as I've already said. A very similar forecast to what the ECMWF has, or actually no, a completely different forecast to what the ECMWF has, is the GFS forecast. They're calling for this tropical low to develop more closer towards Darwin and Melville Island, that sort of area, and then move into sort of the West Australian waters, where it won't really intensify. To be fair, it doesn't even get up towards cyclone status, but it's still a fairly well-rounded tropical low at this point. But we see absolutely nothing in the Gulf of Carpentaria. Once again, this is a very plausible situation. When we see the monsoon trough extend over northern Australia, we can see tropical lows burst off at any particular location. Right now, the forecast models are mostly in line with saying that it's likely to form over the Gulf of Carpentaria, but I mean, it's also possible that we see something across Western Australia as well. However, if it was to get itself over Western Australia, I would be even more concerned in the terms of it will have a huge expanse of essentially bath water to move over, and it'll have a lot of room to intensify, and intensify rapidly as well as it moves over some of the most primed conditions for tropical cyclone intensification that the world has to offer. So once again, that's a little different perspective here. If I was to make a forecast on this system right now, I would be saying that the Gulf of Carpentaria situation that the Access G3 model and the ECMWF model are backing is the most likely. And once again, that's supported by the Archon model as well. Not as fairly well respected as the other forecast models that I've been using, but still though, they're calling for this cyclone to develop by around Wednesday. And if I was to extrapolate this forecast again, it would be bouncing back around to Mornington Island as what could be a significant tropical cyclone at this stage, but we'll have to wait until about Monday morning to get a good idea on what's going to be happening as per the Archon model. To recap this, in terms of wind forecast, track forecast, and intensity forecast, I would be saying expect or start expecting a Category 1 or Category 2 strength tropical cyclone to make landfall between Robinson River over here and up towards maybe Hurricane as well on the Cape York Peninsula and far north Queensland. Anywhere between here, you could be expecting a landfall or cyclone winds, but it is important that you live, if you do live around the Gulf of Carpentaria, which I know is not many people, it's one of the most remote locations in the world, but if you do live around the Gulf of Carpentaria, first of all, hello and thank you for watching this video, but also just be watching the forecast very closely, staying up to date with the Bureau of Meteorology and hearing what they've got to say, and you can also stay up to date with this channel as well for daily weather updates on this tropical cyclone as it wraps itself up in the Gulf of Carpentaria. Now, just to close this video off, or close this episode of this cyclone coverage off, we'll take a look at rainfall and see what's expected over the next 10 days around the Gulf of Carpentaria. There will be a lot of rainfall from this system. It's going to be a monsoonal system, which means you're going to be seeing locations pick up between 500 to 600 millimetres for a lot of places, especially on the Cape York Peninsula up towards Weipa and Urukan, and maybe even as far across as Lockhart River and up towards Thursday Island. You'll be seeing 200 to 400 millimetres. And then wherever this system makes landfall around Burkton or Corumba inland towards Gregory, maybe 150 to maybe 400 millimetres in one or two locations. Maximum rainfall should be under 600 millimetres, but then again, we can't be ruling out some places picking up over 600 millimetres at this time. But once again, the rainfall forecast will become a lot more clearer to us come around maybe Tuesday morning. That's when we're going to have a really good idea on what this system's going to be doing. Now the rainfall forecast varies a little bit by forecast models, but once again, the gist is really the same, 150 to 400 millimetres for a lot of locations around the Gulf of Carpentaria coastline, but it's just a little bit less extreme on the Eastern Hemisphere forecast, A, because they generally don't overestimate in terms of rainfall, but B, because it's also going to be a substantially weaker system as per the Eastern Hemisphere forecast. Now, as promised, we'll take a quick 1 or 2 minute look at this system over Vanuatu for the Vanuatu viewers. It is blowing up some pretty good convection right now, which is pretty powerful thunderstorm activity, as I've mentioned before. You can see it's looking okay, and I say that really loosely. It's got the body of a Category 1's tropical cyclone. It's not looking too hot, let's face it, and it's going to be heading towards Fiji now. Now, I know that's a pretty big change on the forecast, where we were expecting it to double back and impact New Caledonia and then move into the Coral Sea, but we're now expecting it to move over Fiji as a remnant low come around Monday or Tuesday, where we might be seeing some brief periods of heavy rainfall around Suva or Nadi on Fiji before it moves back and weakens off and basically dissipates before it impacts Vanuatu, and more systems form in the South Pacific. They're moving into a really active phase right now, which is to be expected for what's classified as an El Nino year. Now, around Australia, it's been pretty hot across the west. Well, Perth has had some really hot days. They've been in a really hot stretch right now. It's going to be hot once again today, up to 43 degrees Celsius for some locations, especially in the eastern suburbs as well. Might be seeing a couple of dry thunderstorms inland as well. So this fire danger is going to go through the roof. I'm going to take that back to what we're actually meant to be looking at right now. Already 32 degrees Celsius in Perth, and it's only 8 a.m. That's actually crazy. I haven't seen this before in quite a while. So very, very warm over in the west. And yeah, definitely full-blown heatwave conditions there. As you head further north throughout today, I mean, it's still hot, but it's not heatwave hot, 45 to 46 degrees Celsius. Unpleasant, but it's nothing to write home about for the WA summer. Going to get quite hot across parts of South Australia, and then, as mentioned yesterday, into Victoria and New South Wales by early next week. But it looks like we get a cool change Tuesday afternoon, which should bring a little bit of reprieve to the heat, where we will be seeing temperatures cool throughout Wednesday. Still, though, could be a little bit warm across central parts of New South Wales, up to 36 to 38 degrees Celsius, maybe even 1 or 2 cool spots actually across the mountains in Tasmania as well, before it warms up again with the passage of these tropical lows up north by around next Friday and Saturday. We could be seeing maxima approach 50 degrees Celsius over parts of Western Australia and also down towards South Australia as well, so very, very warm indeed. But apart from that, doesn't look too hot. Doesn't look like we've got any standout spots across parts of New South Wales or Queensland. It's been relatively hot for Brisbane as well. Hang on, this has just caught my eye over here. This is going to be some ridiculous temperatures. 51 degrees Celsius. Then again, this is Monday the 19th of February, so it's a long way out. But I mean, you're talking 51 degrees Celsius days. That's record hot. That's some very, very hot conditions. That's nothing to really take lightly. And again, that might not be as hot as it gets. This year seemed to be a forecast, so yeah, it could be vastly different on other forecast models. Yeah, it could get relatively hot as we get into the later parts of February. February, of course, statistically the hottest month for most of Australia, especially down towards the south and the west. So we've got to be expecting these sorts of temperatures this time of the year, but still though, 51 is some nasty, nasty heat. I'll take a look at rainfall accumulation over the next 10 days nationwide. I'm not seeing any standout spots. It looks like the rain might finally be here for northern parts of Western Australia, in the Kimberley region, up to 100 or 150 millimetres for some locations. They have had a very dry start to the monsoon, let me tell you, and also 1 or 2 wet spots across Kakadu as this monsoon really ramps up as well. Cairns as well might also see some pretty wet conditions, maybe down towards Innisfail and Cardwell. We could be seeing up to 200 millimetres over the next 10 days. And then down towards central Queensland as well. Looks like we might move into a bit of an active phase in terms of thunderstorm activity towards the middle of February, and we could be seeing some locations pick up to 100 millimetres. But apart from that, of course, it's dry across Western Australia and South Australia, but nothing really catching my eye in terms of maximum rainfall over the next 10 days. So that's some good news there. Not expecting any flooding unless you're up in towards Queensland with the passage of these tropical lows. And just to recap the purpose of this video, expect a tropical cyclone to move through the Gulf of Carpentaria. I know it's still a long way out, and I'm already waiting for all the comments about how I can't predict tropical cyclones out towards Friday, but it's all good. We could still be seeing this tropical cyclone come around Friday and Saturday, and it could be quite strong as well. Always err on the side of caution if you are up in the Gulf of Carpentaria and this is still on the forecast by around Monday. I'm definitely going to start warning you guys to prepare, but it's definitely something to watch right now and not act upon. Just keep up to date on the forecast, be checking the forecast models twice a day. You can always use windy.com, which is the program that I'm using to make these videos. The Bureau of Meteorology will always have their latest information as well. And if you've got any further questions or comments, then please do leave them in the comment section. I read all of them. It's just a matter of if I've got time to respond to all of them. So thank you so much for all of the support on these videos as well. It really does mean a lot. And thank you so much for all of the help in growing this channel as well. It really does mean quite a lot to me. So thank you so much, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.